This is Governor Bobber. I like good day, doctors.
George Allen here. Good day, doctors.
Very good. Last day of 2022. Well, not the last day, but close to the last day, but our last show for 2022. Welcome. It is Friday. We took a hiatus last week for Christmas. So, everyone, welcome back. It is Friday, December 30th, 2022. 2022 just blew by. And so, how's your Christmas, Don?
It was good. We managed to
Good.
stay busy and deal with our missionaries and whatnot, so it was a good
It
day.
was cold. It was 35 degrees in Florida.
Yeah, that was a pretty bitterly cold weekend we had here. So
Somebody needs the what do you call pay their damn heat bill in Florida. Somebody turned the heater off. And as I was telling somebody, if I wanted to be this cold, I would have just stayed in Maryland, frankly.
yeah, but
Uh,
as long as you've lived in Maryland, you would not have. That was just a weekend. It was rough for
I heard
me.
it was a lot cold. I heard it was a lot colder here. It was almost. I would say it was close to. It struggled to get into the 20s. Christmas Eve and
Yeah,
Christmas
I
Day.
mean, I think the high was 25 to 28, and the low was, lows were around 5, and plus wind chill.
Hmm.
Killed my car battery. Just went out.
Really?
Yeah, so I suppose
You
that
know what I'd like to know is I would love to know what happened to all the hybrid, not the hybrid owners, but the EV people like our friend Marcus with the Teslas.
Yeah, I mean, it is for people who live in colder climates. There is a cold, harsh truth to the Tesla,
Hmm.
is that for EVs, cold weather is not good. It drains a lot of power, and it takes a lot longer to charge get car ready to go and charge. Teslas, I mean, I guess you saw that story about that guy who
Hmm.
just got stuck, right? I mean, he
Yeah.
tried the Tesla supercharger. He was trying to charge at home. He couldn't. He just got kind of stuck for Christmas because he couldn't get anything charged up. But
Hmm.
apparently, I mean, Teslas have this thing where it needs time to kind of warm up before it actually can start charging up when it's that cold. So,
Yeah.
it, and then we had the thing over in North Beach over in Maryland where they had an EV over there in their municipal garage, and it overcharged or whatever, and the whole garage burned down.
Was it a BMW EV or was it a
Well, I
Ford?
mean, you look, it looks like
Because
it was a
the Pinto.
municipality, so it is probably some kind of SUV-ish type of
Hmm.
EV. I mean, it's something that something that a local government would use, whatever
Oh,
that is.
okay. So it might have been a Mustang Mach-E or a Chevy Volt.
Yeah, probably should. I'm not sure the municipalities could get away with a Mustang Mach-E.
That's true. They probably have the Chevy Bolt, and the Chevy Bolt does have that problem. It's funny. The LG phones had the same issues with their batteries were exploding, and General Motors, I guess, decided, hey, we're going to use those same batteries in our Chevy Bolt.
That's a good memory about those exploding phones. I mean, Samsung, I think, had the same problem. They had some, the battery
Hmm.
issues or something like that. So yeah,
Either that, or they just hired the Pinto engineers to develop the Bolt.
hey, look, the Pinto was a great American car. Come on.
Actually, if you look at the design, it actually was a well-designed car. Kind of looked cool. Kind of looked like a spaceship. You know.
I mean, we grew up. I mean, we go back far enough. I mean, you can think about,
Even the
the
Mustang 2 looks good compared to some of the cars that are designed
yeah,
to.
yeah,
And that was,
seriously.
and the Mustang 2 is not a good looking car. I mean, it was like, granted, Ford had to do what they had to do to sell Mustangs.
That was probably, it was a shame to to call that put that into the Mustang family.
Yeah,
My
but
next door neighbor's sister had one,
mhm.
and it's like, Mustang has got a history of being kind of a muscle car, and the to go get them, on the
But look
edge.
at this. This does not look that bad.
Yeah,
It does not look that bad compared to what's on the road today. Some of the stuff.
but what else? I mean, how about the AMC? How about the Gremlin?
Oh yeah. See, look at this. This does not look bad at all. And yeah, the AMC Gremlin. That's another one of those great bubble cars. You got the was not the Gremlin was not the bubble. It was a Pacer.
Oh yeah, the Pacer. The Pacer was, yeah, that it was like a moon. It was so weird. I mean, it was almost as if they were being influenced by something else to have that huge
Yeah.
rear window thing.
I mean, here we have it. This is the Pacer.
There
You
we
know,
go.
and Ed Begley Jr. In some interview mentioned how his family had a Pacer.
Hey, was I was trying.
Here's the
I have to go back. Maybe off the top of your head. I mean, for AMC, was that during the time when Mitt Romney's dad was running AMC?
It may have been. It may have been.
I think didn't he do that for a little while? He
Yeah,
was,
it may have been. It may have been after George
yeah.
Romney. But
But I
yeah,
mean,
speaking of the rock,
he
yeah,
was he wasn't he was an auto guy, right?
yeah, because I know Mitt talks of when he was running, he mentioned the Rambler they had. I mean, look at this. What more would you want? Look at the side. Very basic. By the way, AMC reused these same parts on all their cars. Their Ramblers, their Matadors all had the same door handles. Nothing, which saved them a lot of money. That's why AMC's were a lot. What do you call it? A lot lower cost point when you were trying to buy a car in the '70s. And now they're all collector's items.
Okay, yeah. So that was way below. So Romney left AMC in 1962 to go into politics. That's when he went. That's when he ran for governor of Michigan and
Mm-hmm.
everything. So
I mean, even this. I mean, this is the car we started talking about that had 10. I mean, compared. I mean, it's not a bad looking car. I mean, look at this. You got the. This is the Ford Maverick. Is that the Maverick or is that like the Vega?
it's funny that you bring it to Vega, because the Vega was the next thing I was going to mention. My next door neighbor, her boyfriend, and
Mm-hmm.
then later on husband, had a Chevy Vega, and my memory of that car
That would
was
rust on the
that
showroom.
every time he brought it, he came over to the house. He
Yeah,
had he had to raise the hood so that the engine could cool.
they had a station wagon variant of it. That's interesting.
Huh.
Yeah, and the biggest problem they had was one rust. Evidently, they were saying the car was rusting on the showroom. All those Vegas.
That's one thing actually you don't see too much of, because the cars are made with different materials now. Is that
Yeah,
you don't see a lot of rusting hulks on the road anymore.
yeah, I know. And you know what's funny? It's like every now and then in Kensington, I'll see a guy that has a Chevrolet Celebrity station wagon. That was their replacement for the Chevrolet Malibu back in the day. And then they brought the Malibu back and got rid of the they got rid of the celebrities. I think it did. I think it only had like 5 or 6 model years for the Chevrolet Celebrity, from like '84 to about maybe '87, '88, '89, maybe in the last year for it. But it was your typical GM 1980s box cars. All their cars kind of look like that back in the '80s. Like you stretch it out a little bit, you get yourself a Oldsmobile Delta '88, and then you pull it out some more, you get a '98. You pull it out some more, you get a Cadillac. You know,
I kind of miss the old, those huge station wagons, though, the ones that the
the
Woodies, the
Ford.
ones that had the kind of the wood paneling on the side, and
Oh
and
yeah,
they had that back door that swung open.
hmm and I tell you what was even uh, what do you call? They called them the clamshell variant of the Chevy Impala, I think, and it was like in the '70s. It had a bubble back. It was and here we go. This is it. Oh, this is good enough.
So the Wall Street Journal had an article the other day. They do this.
Yeah, you
The
see,
people
this is
who.
the one where the
Oh
door
yeah.
slid in. Yeah, and there's your the wood panel. This is the Buick, probably Buick Electra wagon. Here's the Pontiac Catalina wagon, which I mean, it's a Pontiac. Of course, it looks nicer, very sportier, I should say.
What was the one that was like kind of a car and a truck together? Was that an El Camino or
Yeah, El Camino and an El Rancho was the other one.
so
Was it
so
elk? Yeah, it
so,
was
so
this right here.
yeah, so there's a car I saw in the Wall Street Journal. They did these stories about people in their old cars and classic cars or
Hmm.
car stories, and they mentioned a Toyota. What is it called? What is it? Toyota Century V12.
Oh
Apparently,
yeah, that's like that is the luxury Toyota, and they sell it in Japan. It's a it's a very luxurious car. It is basically, I think I want to say the Crown is going to be based off of that platform, the new flagship Toyota. There you go. This is the Century. Let's see, do they have pictures of the interior? Because they've got the guy in the back seat. You see, he's got all these controls. You know.
yeah, the whole thing fascinated me because yeah, it says it's got an ottoman for the weary
Yeah.
CEO's feet.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, it's
And it's yeah. This is like
I mean a
this is
V12 engine.
yeah. It's kind of like oh look, they got King Ghidorah. Yeah,
Yeah,
actually, the older versions, this would open up and you could stretch your feet out and put them on the passenger side.
yeah. So in this
But now they
article,
put an ottoman in. Yeah.
yeah, they says that it has sills that are flush with the floor. So
Yeah.
what they say is that it was that way you don't drag the ceremonial kimono
Hmm.
out when you're doing the cars if everything's flush. So and and then the chauffeur sits in the right front seat,
Hmm.
and the VIP owner sits diagonally in back.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, so this guy in this article, I mean, he owns one of those cars. I mean,
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know. For me, it's hard to think about driving from the other side of the car there. But whatever. I,
Yeah. And you know what's funny is in the old Japanese movies, the what do you call it? The all the mobsters would drive big American cars,
well,
and
yeah, I
this
mean,
is.
I don't know. I mean, we watch a lot of K dramas and stuff like that in this house, and one
Mhm.
of the things that we look at a lot of times is like, what kind of cars are they driving? In this, and these are all things that have been done in the last four or
Mhm.
5 years. Um, a lot of them are driving Chevys. Some of them are
Yep.
driving sometimes they drive a Korean branded car, but
Mhm.
there's one that Disney did, and the lead character is driving a Tesla, but they covered up the nameplate, and in the back it has like a big M on it or something like that. And the subtitles are like, car engine revs. It's an electric car.
Yeah. By the way, this is the Ford Capri. In a
Oh
lot of the
yeah.
Godzilla movies, the heroes would be driving in some variant of the Ford Capri, which I thought was interesting. They didn't, because the Toyota, there was a Toyota that was very similar to this. I used to, I want to say the Corolla or something like that looks similar to the Capri, but it had round lights. And it kind of looked like a jelly jar on its side. If you remember the jelly jars from the 70s and early 80s, it kind of looked like a jelly jar with wheels on it.
Our old friend Peter LaBarbera used to almost virtually live out his Chevette.
Yes, I do remember that. Yes.
It was one very messy car.
Yeah. Well, does that shock you? I mean, remember his
No,
office.
no, it's
Remember
typical
that
Pete.
office.
It's very, yeah,
How
it's
many
very
months did
Pete.
it take Dan to clean out that office when he came in?
Yeah,
You know. Because Dan Flynn was the new ED after him, correct?
Yeah, Dan Flynn took over, and yeah,
Yeah, he probably spent 6 months just cleaning the office out with all the papers and all the.
and for a guy like Dan, I mean, he was in the Marine Reserves too while he was working for AIA, but he's a pretty straight laced guy. I mean, and I think he's pretty neat.
Mhm.
And he knew Pete. I mean, can you imagine? It's like it's one thing if you're cleaning out your predecessor's office and you really didn't know the person,
Yeah.
but Dan and Pete were friends. Don't you kind of think you saw Dan's like, what the heck what did he do here?
Yeah, I mean, it's like it was very similar to like your dad's office, who had those newspapers stacked around
Oh my gosh.
his
Yeah. Well, I
computer
mean,
monitors. I
yeah. I
remember.
mean, every time my father would go on an extended trip, and then either Patty Lasky or one of the other secretaries would go in there and try to clean up the
Mhm.
desk a little bit like that. My father would inevitably come back and it's like, you know, I knew where everything was before. What'd you do? Right?
Yeah, I remember. There was also Patty Lasky. When I was there, she goes, I saw some smoke out of Mr. Irvine's office, and it was basically at the newspapers on those old CRT monitors, and sure enough, the paper was starting to.
Well, there's a new story for me. I didn't realize that. I mean,
Yeah.
it was always one. I don't know. I do have that memory of like walking by his office a lot of times. You know, and if you tried to see if he was in, you couldn't always tell because the stuff was piled so high.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, he
You
had.
could,
I remember when we got new monitors. I had to go in and put in the new monitors, and it's like the papers. Take the old stuff. It's like an avalanche happened almost when I
yeah, you got
tried.
to watch out.
When I took the old monitor out, it's like everything just comes crashing down. It's like an avalanche.
Yeah,
And yeah, the good old days. But it's been a busy week, and President Joey B is in St. Croix. While Buffalo, over 30 Americans have died, Americans stranded at airports and all that. I think Joe Biden's out of touch with
yeah.
America.
At the very least,
I
the
remember the here's the I remember the media giving President Bush 43 such a hard time. He was already on vacation at the Western White House at his Crawford Ranch, where he was conducting the job of president from there. And everyone always makes a big fuss that he is not. He's on vacation. Joe Biden left Washington in middle of a weather crisis. In the
Yeah, I mean,
middle.
I mean, presidents are, I mean, they deserve to take their vacations, wherever all of them. I'm not gonna begrudge that, but you also have to look at the optics of exactly what was going on here. There were a lot of problems this past week or so, and Biden is nowhere to be found as a result of that.
Oh yeah.
Instead, the cabinet minions are trying to take care of things, or Karine Jean-Pierre, and it was a
Yes.
disaster.
And not to be that guy. Okay, I am getting a little frustrated with all these people wanting to blame Southwest Airlines for what was a weather catastrophe. By the way, here is Joey B. right here in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and this is Buffalo, New York. It was 83 degrees, and I think it was like maybe struggling to get to 20 degrees in Buffalo that day. It's like really, talk about being out of touch. You know,
Yeah, no,
and
it was not a good look. I mean, the Southwest thing is kind of difficult to kind of get through because, I mean, it was a major weather event,
mhm.
but the way they run their airline is so different than how
Yeah,
Delta
they don't
and
have hubs. They've got like spokes as
right, and
and
Southwest doesn't do that, and
mhm.
that contributes to the problem, I think, of when you have an event like this. They had planes that were not in the right position,
Yeah.
crews that were timing out. It was bad. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I
uh,
was feeling bad. I couldn't get a Southwest flight to Florida. I had to fly American, and you know how much I like American Airlines.
well, and
And
I mean, I'm sure you had the same. I'm sure you saw the same thing on Facebook. I mean, I
yeah,
think was it Jason? Didn't he have to
yeah,
drive to Florida or something like that, or wherever he was going? And I had another friend of mine that was like, driving to Florida, courtesy of Southwest, and these are all people were having a lot of problems. I
Yeah.
mean,
Well,
but it's not exactly a huge hardship to drive from Maryland to Florida.
mhm.
It wasn't going to be as bad as people having to drive through
To
far worse
Houston.
weather to get
Yeah.
to where they were going if they
Yeah.
could find a car.
Yeah, and right, and and this weekend Colorado is being slammed with snow and ice and all bad weather. And then you have Pete Buttigieg who wants to do investigations into Southwest Airlines. Could this be because the Southwest CEO was against masks on airplanes? I don't know. I'm just thinking, is this maybe not be a little bit of payback from
Yeah,
Pete Buttigieg?
as if Pete Buttigieg has any idea what he's doing, right?
Yeah. I mean, where was he when we? Where was he? Oh, wasn't he in France or something like that? When the last time we had some, was it Labor Day weekend? We had the flight issues, because of there was a lot of flight issues. I want to say it was in September is when that happened. There's some South, and it also this all goes back to their regulations about making mandatory retirement age for pilots. Southwest, had a lot of pilots, and they forced them to retire because of the federal mandate. And now we have a pilot shortage,
Yeah,
which
and I know there's been talk about revisiting that because, that rule's been in effect for a long time,
mhm.
and there's I don't really think there's a lot of evidence that says, look, if you retest your pilots, I mean, why can't you let them fly to at
I
least
mean,
70 or
yeah.
something,
I
right?
mean, we let 70-year-olds drive on the road. I mean, Joe
We
Biden
got
actually
80,
has
we
a
got 80, 90-year-olds driving on the road, right? I mean,
yeah, and some of those 80, 90-year-olds,
relatively safely.
yeah. I
Well,
mean,
I
some of
mean,
those,
Florida is full of people, that are old driving
and
around.
and they drive really fast too, which is I like that. It's like these people are you're cruising along at 85 and somebody blows by you at 95, which I think is hilarious. Yeah, and
Well,
my niece.
Robin's bringing up an interesting point about the pandemic relief funds too to the airlines.
Oh yes, let's bring up Robin's comments. Yeah, that is true. They did receive $7 billion.
Yeah, and I'm sure I'm guessing that wasn't as much as some of the other airlines received, but
Yeah.
they got really hammered based on between the weather and the way they run their system.
Hmm.
Uh, and I do think, I mean, I had posted that one thing on Facebook from a guy who talked about just the difference from the Herb Kelleher days,
Hmm.
who ran Southwest
Yeah.
for a long time. I was thinking about it. I mean, Southwest had this reputation of being a cheap airline, a lot of fun to fly, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I've flown it a little bit, in the
I
last
like Southwest. I like the
year.
fact that for $20, I can get early boarding. I get boarded right up front. Another friend suggested it because if you
Well,
say that if you've got
my,
some,
my my thing, Dwight, really was just that. I mean, I think Southwest there's some merits. I mean, I'm not crazy about the boarding system where you got a 24 hours. You're on your computer, your phone, and you're trying to get your boarding group. But as you said, you can pay depending upon the flight.
yeah,
You can pay to get early boarding, get
hmm,
the 8 to 115 group and whatever, and
yeah,
do stuff like that. That's definitely something that kind of happens in the industry now. Is that you pay more for getting better seats and
yeah.
that's
Or you say you've got some reasons you need to board early on the plane, so you don't have to pay. You get bumped to the front, like do a
right.
wheelchair request.
But Southwest in general,
Uh-huh.
is not as cheap as it used to be, right?
No,
But they
I.
do, but they don't charge for bags. And as Robin's
Mhm.
pointing out here is that, they don't have a change fee, that's really been, everybody hates change fees because, the last time they had change fees before the airline suspended them in, 2020 for the pandemic,
Yep.
they were running up to $200, every time you
Oh
did
yeah.
that. That wiped out the cost of some tickets.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
then,
American Airlines would they do? It's funny when you book an American Airlines flight, the price sometimes is lower than Southwest, but then they nickel and dime you for a bag and stuff like that. So I'm like, I just go with Southwest. I get 2 check bags with Southwest.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. You have to look at them as total package prices. I mean, there are a lot of people who fly, Frontier and Spirit and those things, and they definitely have cheap flights.
That
But
is
you're going to
Bats.
pay. You're going to pay for your seat. Sometimes you have to pay to if you check the bag at
Yeah.
the counter versus checking the bag online, and paying for it up front. All kinds of things, and I don't know. I mean, I don't find them to be as reliable and a lot of other things. And
Yeah.
so, I would prefer to fly the major airlines no matter what.
Yes.
Um,
Frontier and those the people that put the no in no frills. They
that's
kind of remind me of a Greyhound bus. It's like you may as well, you're taking a flying Greyhound. Is what I'm sorry, it's Greyhound. Greyhound should get into the airline business, and they could be the no frills.
yeah, well, I mean, I mean, after deregulation of the airlines, I mean, we saw lots of things. You remember People's Express and things like
Yeah, I
that.
remember People Express. Yeah, Robin flies Alaska nonstop. It really. Do they fly to Florida, Robin? If they do, I might actually try them out.
Well, you speak about nonstop flights. I mean, so my wife will go to Utah a few times a year to check on her 90-year-old mother.
Hmm.
And one of the issues there, now is that, post pandemic, is that Southwest basically, you know, dropped all their nonstop flights between BWI and Salt Lake, which
Hmm.
is which is too bad because I mean, you have that was a 4.5 hour flight maybe from start to
Hmm.
finish. It was nice to go direct instead of having to make these connections, which adds, a couple hours easily
Yeah.
to the whole day. Uh, and a lot of those things, I mean, there's a lot of the convenience factor of Southwest that is gone. They don't really they're not really that distinguishable except for
Yeah.
the free bag policy than a lot of other airlines anymore. I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Southwest used to fly to Huntsville too. You could get a direct flight to Huntsville years ago, and now if you want to go to Huntsville, you got to go to you. They route you through another airport. There's no direct flights to Huntsville from BWI.
why you bring up who flies to Huntsville?
I do for business.
Are you
Marshall
space
Space
guy?
Flight. Yeah, Marshall Space Flight Center.
I figured that. I thought it's like there's only one reason Dwight brought up Huntsville. Nobody else would bring up Huntsville. Maybe Joe
Yeah,
Gillen would bring up Huntsville or something like that.
yeah. Actually, our old friend Mr. Matthew might bring up Huntsville. Maybe that's how you get to Jackson. You fly into Huntsville.
Every
It's kind of
time every time I see Jackson, Mississippi, in the
yeah,
headlines, I think
yeah,
of him immediately and thinking like,
yeah. Same here.
the water problems, all the other issues. Like one of these days, I'm going to have to message him and say, "It's like, okay, so what is the problem with your hometown?"
Yeah, but it's funny. There's a gal that works. She's the 508 expert for NASA. Got her now. I think she's NASA. But she's from Tupelo,
Tupelo,
and
the home of the American Family Association.
yeah, and she's a diehard Trekkie too. It's funny.
What's
Like
this
we'll get up.
comment? That's pretty funny, actually.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yeah, I actually fly in my Yukon. I usually can cruise. Once I pass Richmond, I can be cruising down 80 miles, 80, 85 easily. I get 25 miles to the gallon on my Yukon.
On the highway, probably, right? I mean,
Yeah, I get
yeah,
about
yeah,
10 to 13 in the city.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Sometimes less.
yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of it's expected to get
Mhm.
low mileage in the city and a little bit better mileage on the highway. I mean, that thing for 25 miles, that's pretty
Yeah,
good,
I know. And, it's also only using 4 cylinders when I'm on the highway, too.
huh?
Doesn't need the full power of the six. Because it got that is one of the best things General Motors put in was their variable engine, where it doesn't use all. And actually, now they even have it for their 6 cylinder cars. Will only go where you're cruising. Those 6 cylinder cars will only take 3 cylinders. You
Huh.
know,
So I
and I
haven't
think
I haven't even heard about this before. That's interesting.
yeah, yeah. Basically, it goes from 8 to 4, And actually, somebody told me, depending on the speed and what you're hitting, you could go down to two, just using two cylinders sometimes. You know, because evidently, it doesn't tell you you're at two cylinders, but it does tell you when you get to four or you get to eight. But I tell you, once you're at four, that's when you start. And actually, if I can maintain because you got to brake because you always have some slow drivers, or those truckers come in front of you and whatever. You got to brake. Otherwise, I'm wondering if I could actually get better than 25 on the highway, maybe closer to 30, if I didn't have to brake.
Yeah, you probably won't get 25 on the highway if you're driving through West Virginia like I've done before.
No, this is actually driving. This was through the Carolinas, actually. Driving back
Yeah,
from Florida.
I mean, Carolina's not bad unless you're driving like by the Smoky Mountains or something like
Yeah,
that.
no, this is like 95. I just take 95 straight down. I'll
But
take the Governor Allen, Governor Gilmore, Richmond bypass, which saves me a lot of time too. Yeah, I am so glad they have that there because I would. It's a little bit longer than going straight through Richmond, but I tell you, with all the traffic and all that, it is worth the extra miles you spend on that bypass road. I mean, we've used that when we've gone down to North Carolina a couple times.
yeah, I mean that's the road that goes off, but it goes towards the airport or something like that, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's
Sometimes those things are good to have, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And probably this year we'll probably. I think they're doing. I think North Carolina's going to have an in-person convention. I think we might actually have to go visit our old friend Chris and others down there.
Chris seems to be doing very well. Good
He
for
is
him.
doing very well. He's almost a lawyer now.
Yeah, good for
Yeah.
him.
So yeah, congratulations, Chris, if you're watching. What else is he going to be doing today anyway? So,
Yeah,
but
right. They're
we've
not
had a
busy at
lot.
all.
Yeah, I mean, law school ads. It's an easy thing to do.
So if Robin's still watching, I'd love to get his 2 cents on something I saw today, but it didn't follow through, which was that uh, Maryland assessments for property had gone
Yeah,
up
they all went up.
20.6% in this new cycle.
I got mine, and I am like shocked.
Well, they'll send the new assessment out, official assessment out in July.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm probably due for that new assessment. I'm like, great. This is if those assessments are going up by that much on the average, you
Yeah,
know, I I hope people will be looking at the county and the state to say, okay, you need to cut the property tax rate to try to mitigate some of this.
yes. And since they neutralized the Great Ficker Amendment in Montgomery County, they don't need a clear majority to raise property taxes, frankly. And I think Robin Ficker needs a new ballot initiative for 2024 to reinstate that,
I
frankly.
want to say that I'm always appreciative of Robin and his efforts on the taxes. This
Hmm.
is this is something that few, if any, people really will take a hold of and will stake their
Hmm.
reputation on. And so he's probably talking about heating, not hearing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But you never know. Montgomery County may want a tax hearing too.
But
If you want to come to one of our hearings, you gotta pay a fee.
but I do want to say, I mean, that Robin has been one of the greatest defenders,
Yes.
fighters on taxes
Robin
in
is the
Maryland.
friend of the taxpayer in Montgomery County. He is
Yeah,
the best friend, BFF of the Montgomery County taxpayer, frankly.
yeah, it's
But
yeah, and
and
we all see the net effect of that. It's just it,
and 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 also, I don't know if many of our viewers know, but Robin Ficker is running for the United States Senate against Ben Cardin. Go check him out at Robin Ficker for USSenate.com. Robin Ficker for USSenate.com.
yeah, never hurts to
There you
start
go.
early. Hey, I mean,
Yeah.
that next cycle is a Republican cycle, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the Democrats have got to defend more seats, and so they're going to have a little more problems there. And who knows? Maybe we can turn some things around in Maryland and get Robin some votes here.
Yeah. And Robin, I think Ben Cardin's only getting tough on these airlines and special interests because he's afraid that Robin's got his number.
Yeah, look, I mean, the one thing about, we'll see with Robin is that he will expose Ben Cardin. He will call Ben out,
Yeah,
which a lot of, this is part of the problem for a lot of Republicans is that they don't have that mentality to call out their opponents. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I love it, Robin.
And also, Robin, I don't know if you knew about this, but remember the S&L crisis of the 80s? Jeffrey Levitz and Old Court Savings and Loan. While we were all allowed to only take $1,000 a month out of our accounts, the Cardin family miraculously was able to take all of their money out right before everything went to hell in a handbasket. Think it's a coincidence, Robin?
Dwight, I haven't heard the name Old Court Savings and Loan in
Oh, yeah.
decades. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, or Jeffrey Levitz for that matter. And I tell you, it did in one of our better Democrat governors, William Donald Schaefer. Not William Donald Schaefer, Harry Hughes, because Harry Hughes was running for Senate that year, and he lost to the primary to Babs Mikulski, and old Babs basically tarred and feathered him with the SNL crisis, even though it really wasn't his fault.
So, one of the things Robin talks in here is, he says term limits. I mean, this is something that Republicans seem to be very divided on, though.
Yeah, okay, my view, okay, I am not for term limits. I'll tell you why. Who would not have wanted a third term for President Reagan or a third term for President George W. Bush, 43, the Great? We would have been so much better off if President Reagan had a third term. I think term limits limit democracy. I mean, I remember Wyoming at one point passed term limits, and then I think it was maybe the Wyoming Supreme Court that said, "Oh, these are unconstitutional," and they got rid of the term limits for their senators there. That's how Alan Simpson was able to be the senator for life there.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm not sure, we could ever get it done on the national level for Congress
no,
and for Senate. I just see that that's something that's on the state level, in, yeah, local things. I mean, I think, you know, the problem has been is that in a lot of these areas is that you get these people that just get entrenched, right? And
yeah,
and you don't get a changeover. I mean, I am it's so difficult sometimes because there is value in the wisdom of some of the long-term people in there. They kind of, but on the other hand, the power of an incumbency is so strong. It's very hard to unseat them unless they retire or die, or just get miraculously upset in a
hmm
primary.
yep.
So, there are a lot of people who want to push their way up, and you know,
Cardin is 79 years old.
well, yeah, look at what we've got
He's,
as a president. I mean, even
I know,
Donald Trump's not young anymore either by any stretch of the
yeah.
imagination.
Maybe Biden should pick Ben Cardin as his running mate in 2 years, so that way it will look like. So he'll look like a spring chicken compared to Ben Cardin. Because I think Joe Biden's what 77 or 70 something like that right now. How
78
old
maybe.
is? Yes. Oh, he's 70. There you go. He's a year younger than his VP. It's like that old joke. If you remember when Bob Dole was running for president, they joked how uh, Strom Thurmond was going to be his running mate. Uh, you know, Bob Dole, veteran of World War II. Strom Thurmond, veteran of the Civil War. Oh, Biden's 80.
Yeah, I think when he was elected, he was 78, right?
Oh, wow. He's old. He's got OLD
Yeah.
stage 3. But, we've got, I think that is something. If we're making airline pilots retire, and it surely make some of these politicians. See, Robin, that is the solution for Trump. Let's just say that, you hit 65, you retire from the United States Senate, unless we could do a caveat to keep some good senators around, but uh, you have to knock on everyone's door and let them sign a little note. We'd like to see you run again, and you got to do it yourself. You can't hire somebody to do. You got to go get 1,000 people from your state to say that they want you for another term. Then you could run after you're 65. But 65, you're done. Mandatory retirement for the members of Congress. I think that would be better than term limits.
Yeah, something. I mean, it's like, yeah, I mean, Strom Thurmond was quite a guy, but you know, way past his prime when he was serving. I mean, I think Chuck Grassley, you know, they need a younger person in there.
Yeah.
But the same thing. I mean, in California, Dianne Feinstein. I mean, you have these people that are just old,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
we need both parties need younger blood in there. And when the older people don't retire,
Hmm.
it just kind of it kind of discourages others from even participating in the process.
Hmm. Yeah, and I want to bring up the RNC chairman's race, which we decided January 27th. There's, I think, that's true. There is. Maybe we should do the same thing, Robin. Instead of doing term limits for SCOTUS, we basically just say, "Hey, you can only work till you're 72," because they really don't have too much moving around to do in the Supreme Court. So, 72, you're gone. You know.
Well, I mean, the Wall Street Journal was pointing out the other day, which is true, which is just like it may have been an op-ed. I can't remember. I saw the headline. Now that with the Democrats in control of the Senate, they now think that Kagan and Sotomayor,
Hmm.
they're old and they may need to step aside. Uh, and it's like because they're thinking like, okay, they get if the Senate turns over to
Yeah.
Republicans, then they're not going to have a chance to get any more liberal justices for a while.
Hmm.
And I mean, Kagan and Sotomayor are not that old, but the Democrats are very nervous about the future.
Yeah. And going back to the RMC chairman's race, we've got you know Ronna McDaniels, who's running for re-election. Yes, she's had 3 tough elections. But this woman from California, Hamid Dillon, Duhan, Dulan.
Mr. Dillon,
Anyways,
Dillon, I think, yeah, Harmeet Dillon.
yeah, from California, former national committee woman for the great state of California. I have real concerns about her. She seems soft on abortion. We are the party of life. She is okay with the ACLU. And let's talk about this. It's something that people don't want to mention, but let's look at this. The candidates that Vice President Pence and President Bush backed won. Jeff Kemp. The people that that were not that were endorsed by the other guy. Look, I mean, in Maryland, Dan Cox went down in flames. Uh, Pennsylvania, Dr. Oz and that other guy, the guy that ran for governor there, he went down in flames.
Mastriano.
Uh, yeah, and then you have Carrie Lake, and I'm sorry, Carrie Lake does need to concede, frankly. We don't need her to be the Republican, what's her name? Stacey Abrams.
Yeah, look, I mean, on the thing, I have a good friend in Arizona, and she's a smart gal and everything like that. She's an attorney and
Hmm.
whatnot, but she is constantly writing articles about the Arizona elections and about improprieties and
Hmm.
pushing Kerry Lake and the other things with the AG's race there and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, no, you got to get past this, okay? Look, there wasn't anything there that was proven that would have changed
Yeah.
the outcome of the
Hmm.
race. You just go on with it, just
Hmm.
move on and quit doing that because you're right. We don't want the Stacey Abrams type of thing going on there. That was part of Trump's problem too, is that he built up this thing and couldn't get past the stolen election deal. It's like, look,
He can't
that's
let it go that he lost,
no.
and I'm sorry, Mr. President, you lost. You know, President Nixon in 1960 had a better case for voter fraud than the Trump campaign did. I'm sorry. I think he had the. Here's the thing. Yes, there was voter fraud, but whining about it is not going to help. We're not going to be able to overturn this election. What we need to do is work on registering more Republicans and getting our people out harvesting ballots, because ballot harvesting is perfectly legal in states like Maryland and California. That's how California Republicans took back so many seats in 2020. We took we are now we have representation all the way to the Pacific Ocean, which we did not before.
Yeah, and the Republicans, I think we've talked about this before, Dwight, too. It's just that the Democrats have got a sizable advantage with mail-in and early voting.
Mhm.
Republicans have just got to say, this is here to stay. So
Yeah.
in essence, quit.
You
You can't find it. Get on board with it and get your
Mhm.
people out there, and let's boost. Let's get the registration. Let's get the people out.
And Cash Patel had an article this past week. If we want to change it, we need to basically take over and win the mail-in game, the ground game, so to speak, with early voting, so we can get majority, so we can get rid of mail-in voting. But we're not going to be able to do it. Like states like Maryland, we're never going to get rid of mail-in voting. I mean, I think what we might have the Democrats aren't going to change it. We don't have a Republican governor, and I don't, Westmore is not going to go out on a limb and say, "Oh, I don't like this mail-in ballot stuff." I mean, of course, they love mail-in ballot. It's like honestly, mail-in ballot is the lazy person's voting. It's like phoning it. It's like my sister's daughter used to go to this back years ago. She used to go to charter school in Boca, and she would, and one of the requirements of this charter school is parents had to volunteer. Being a physician, it's like, so she would actually collect little things on back of cans that had points and all that. So if you got to the school, and I remember I made a comment, I go, you're like phoning it in, you're phoning this in, opposed to actually going in and getting your hands muddy and getting messy volunteering at the school. You're just phoning it in. It's like you're like those people who just want to write a check instead of actually being part of the solution. You just want to write a check. And her comment was, "Yeah, I'd be happily write a check. I don't even. I'd happily write a check if I could get out of it, And it's like you can't. It's like, what are you going to do? And she goes, "Well, sick people depend on me." I'm like, sick people with broken bones depend on you. They're not really sick. You're just resetting bones and fixing hips and stuff for old people.
Yeah, but
But
the bottom line, I think, right, Dwight, is just that instead of Republicans whining about early voting and mail-in ballot, go and get out there and do something about it.
Yes, they did that in Wycombe County. That's where we had our best night in Maryland. We need to be smart about it. We just can't complain. Oh, there we go. There you go, Robin. We got a win there. Kim Yee.
I hear in Arizona, I guess Kelly Ward's not running for the state chair anymore, and there's like a ton of candidates running for all those Republican Party offices out there.
Is Kelly Ward the one that was that listened to Coast AM, or was that someone else, or is that McSally? Now, there was one candidate, a Republican running for governor that was or Senate that was all into UFO disclosures and all that stuff in Area 51. It needed McSally.
Could have been. I mean, Kelly tried to run.
Yeah. And I think and here's another thing I'm going to shock people. I think Mitch McConnell needs to step aside as leader of the Senate. I really think he's been around for so long. Bob Dole, one of my favorite United States senators, never stuck around this long. Bob Dole had the good sense to step aside. Trent Lott stepped aside. Alan Simpson was the number 2. He stepped aside for Trent Lott. I mean, Tim Frist, he stepped aside. Mitch McConnell needs to kind of basically just go into retirement. He's been serving Kentucky for a long time. He screwed over our old friend and Hall of Fame pitcher Jim Bunning by threatening to primary him.
McConnell is the guy you love to hate and everything like that. I mean, he is a great politician.
Hmm.
He's overall, I think he's done a good job in guiding the Republicans in the Senate
Yeah.
under some
Look, he got
disagreements. But
Kavanaugh through. He got Kavanaugh
yeah,
through. He got our justices there. He's the reason we're able to. I mean, but I just think he's been. It goes back to that whole my whole thing about mandatory retirement age. Mitch has been there for a little. It's time for you to retire. It's time to go. Let's go back.
well,
Go back to your old Kentucky home.
it does it does beg the question, like what the Republicans used to do when they were in control of Congress before, which was that they had committee chairs and things like that had a definite time limit, right?
Yeah.
They instituted that so that somebody can't sit as the head of the Ways and
Hmm.
Means Committee for 20
Hmm.
years and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So they put that in when they were in charge,
Yep.
and for their people. I mean, there isn't anything.
That was the Dan Rostenkowski rule. Dan Rostenkowski was Ways and Means chair for a very long
Well, yeah, I
time.
mean, you have the Rostenkowski, you have the Wright Patmans of the world, and
Yeah.
all these people that were there that ruled with an iron fist forever. It seems so. I think there is value, as we had talked about term limits before for other things, is that at a certain point in time, maybe you give up that position,
Hmm.
as you'd be grooming somebody to take over, and
Hmm.
then turn that job over to them and let
Yeah.
them lead for 10 years or
Exactly.
whatever.
I mean, there's a lot of capable people in the United States Senate, that could step up to be, who is his wingman right now? Who is the deputy whip, the deputy
That's a,
Republican
that-
leader?
that's a good question. We only hear about McConnell most of the
Actually,
time.
wait a minute. I know where. We actually have that actually. If you go to the Montgomery County Republican Club page, we've got that whole thing down at the bottom. It is there you go. It's John Thune. John Thune would make an excellent leader,
Oh,
and
John,
John
yeah,
Brass. Yeah,
yeah.
John Brasso could move up. He's the minority whip right now. He becomes leader, and John Brasso becomes the minority whip. John Thune becomes the leader. Then we have Roy Blunt becomes the conference chair, and Joni Ernst moves up to policy committee chair, and Rick
Did,
Scott
did,
moves
did,
up.
didn't Blunt just retire this time though?
That is true, yeah. So yeah, there's going to be a new person with that job. Joni Ernst can take that over. Rick Scott moves over. Joni Ernst becomes the conference chairman, or the hell, Rick Scott could be the conference chairman. I'm not too picky. These are very capable people, frankly. And we can bring in somebody new to be, the Republican senatorial, basically committee senatorial committee chairman. Somebody like I don't know. There's a lot of good people. I can think of. Bring in somebody like who am I thinking of? Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz. One of those would be great for that role.
Yeah, wouldn't that be something?
Yeah.
What do you think about this idea that's floating out there? To have an outsider become serve as the House Speaker.
Yeah, so I'll only do this. I think it'd be funny if they decided to make Donald Trump the Speaker of the House.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think J.C. Watts would come back to become Speaker?
JC wants to be good. Newt Gingrich would be another good one. You know.
There are definitely some capable outsiders.
Yeah, I mean, J.C. Watts,
Robin Ficker.
Robin Ficker. Yes,
We ought
Robin.
to
How
start,
would you?
we start a campaign tonight. Robin Ficker for Speaker of the House.
Yeah, Robin. I mean, you'd love to be Speaker.
Wouldn't that be something? He would
I
he
know.
would he would shake things up.
Yeah, or
I do
Governor
like what
Ehrlich.
Robin said here though in these comments, Dwight, about the ballot, the absentee ballot. I
Mhm.
think I think he's right. I mean, probably every 2 or 3 years, people who are on that list should renew themselves or whatever. At least, I
Mhm.
mean, I think he's talking about 2 years and maybe you're off, but
Yeah.
I think because it's once you sign up, they'll just keep sending it to you
Yeah.
forever. I
Or it
think
should
you
be
should
one. It should be based
force to
on the
verify.
presidential cycle. If you haven't voted in 4 years, you're off the rolls. You know.
Yeah, the voter rolls are interesting too because you know we we had some friends of ours that temporarily lived with us for a few months while they were
Mhm.
after they sold their house and they were trying to get resituated, and they eventually moved to a place in Wheaton, and then they moved up to Boston, to New Hampshire, to be with their daughter. But even during that short 2 or 3 months they were staying with us, they registered to vote, at our address. The husband
Hmm.
has since passed on, but the wife, I keep getting those, voter guide things from, Montgomery County for every election cycle. And then the kicker was a couple days ago, she got a jury summons notice, right? Because they're pulling them off the registration, right? The voter
Hmm.
registration rolls.
Yep.
And she lives in New Hampshire. She's lived in New Hampshire for like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
It's like,
That she.
what is she still doing on the voter rolls? Because apparently the only way to get off those rolls,
Yeah.
except for dying, is that you
Yeah.
actually have to write a letter or something like that and say, "Take me off."
I mean, our friend Pat, her kids still get, and not, her kids. One of them lives in California, one of them lives in New York. They still get sample ballots and stuff like that.
Yeah, something. I wonder. I can't remember now. I didn't pay enough
The
attention whether I'm still
Spencer.
getting one from my daughter.
Hmm.
I know I used to get them all the time, but uh, it just seems like with voter registration that, if you haven't voted for a couple of cycles or whatever, especially, then you should just be purged, and
Hmm.
then
Yeah, I
and
think
then
so.
forced to reply, because
Yeah.
that would just lop off a lot of people. We get a much better idea where we are,
Hmm.
registration wise, if that would happen.
Yeah. And I think one is that'd be great, cleaning up those roles. One, two, I think we need to take all this emotion out of it, so to speak. We've got a circular firing squad right now going on. There was somebody that sent around some manifesto about what they. This is like probably before the convention about this and that. And I don't think this is a party election, and now everyone's like all up in arms and demanding that everybody vote for Hamid. I'm sorry. Let's just stay with Rona, frankly.
Was this the guy that kept soliciting opinions from the Central Committee members
Uh huh. Uh huh.
and stuff like that? Yeah, I just ignored
Yeah.
him.
It's like we need to focus on winning in 2024. And I'm sorry. I don't think Hamid's organized enough to run a May. It's kind of like it's like all these people that think they want to do this, want to do that. It's like no, you're not qualified for the job, frankly. I don't think Hamid was even if Hamid were say chair for several terms of the California Republican Party, I can see, okay, she's a large organization. I don't even know, do they still do two conventions, or are they down to just do one convention a year?
They had voted to do one a year, and I don't know if they've kept that together or not.
Yeah. Which I think is, I really think, it was nice they did two a year, north and south. When you have a big state like that, I mean, we do two conventions a year, and we're not even big of a
I
state.
know. Yeah, I think it's overkill for Maryland, but hey,
Now, I like it. I like it because it gives me two opportunities to get to Ocean City.
yeah. Except they're not in Ocean City twice a year.
No, but I think this is what I think. My dream is Ocean City and Rocky Gap, and then St. Mary's County for another. These those are the 3 points: St. Mary's, Ocean City, Rocky Gap. Uh, and if we do Ocean City early enough, we get really good rates. We do Rocky Gap in October, we get good rates. And St. Mary's, I bet we get good rates anytime, pretty much there. But by the way, real quick before we sign off and do final thoughts, but a lot of crazy weather this year. Not weather, but a lot of big stories. I want to say, I think the biggest one I think is the death of Queen Elizabeth,
That's definitely a
and
good story.
and two is I think the failed Russian war in Ukraine, which lasted, what are we at, 300 days, 300 some days now,
309 now, apparently.
309 days longer than they expected it to run.
Well, yeah, I mean, you
Uh,
can see Putin now. I mean, he's even seeming to say, let's talk.
yes,
And I
yes.
think it's possible that Zelensky. I mean, he could make they could make a long list with a lot of kind of soft points, things that'll be easy giveaways
Mm-hmm.
and then that gives, if he would do that, they could concede a bunch of smaller points, and then
Mm-hmm.
Putin could always say, well, I did wring these concessions out of them, and
Yeah.
everything like that. So we got something out of this because right now, I mean, Putin, his reputation is just shredded.
He doesn't want Ukraine to become his Afghanistan. And people are already saying that Ukraine is Arabic for Afghanistan. Or
But,
Cyrillic for
I mean,
Afghanistan, I should say.
I was when I was reading a Wall Street Journal article in the last week they were talking about just how his close allies, military advisors, wouldn't tell him the truth about what was happening, in
Mm-hmm.
Ukraine. That they just needed to feed him good news, so they would feed him good news, and then he would personally order troops to remain in places where they were just out, they were getting outmaneuvered
Mm-hmm.
and everything like that, to the point where when they did abandon a place, they left behind, not just dead Russian soldiers, but they also left behind materiel that
Yeah.
the Ukrainians could use. So it is an utter disaster, for Putin,
Mm-hmm.
and he needs a way to get out of this without losing too much face.
Yeah.
And Zelensky could do that, especially if some by some measure that Zelensky could regain control of Crimea as a result of this.
That was really what Zelensky's poison pill or whatever should be. We want Crimea back.
Yeah.
No, no deal. No, you leave. The territorial integrity of Ukraine will be restored to where it was to the 1994, whatever they did the treaty with Boris Yeltsin. They'll go back to those days. You
Yeah, I
know,
mean, if he could regain control of Crimea, that would be huge.
yeah. And but has Time Magazine selected a Man of the Year?
It was supposed to be Zelensky.
Because I haven't seen because I have not even maybe I just haven't been watching enough television. But I haven't seen any too much fanfare. Because I remember last year they made a big whoop-de-doo about the healthcare workers were their person of the year. I think was it last year. I was the person of the year for 2019 because I invented the space gun so we could kill the aliens
Yeah.
and colonize planets. Actually, that was also another year where they should have given it to the Hong Kong freedom protesters in 2019, but yet they gave it to someone else. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah. And I did see a lot of things about people complaining about, oh, it's been given to a foreigner. Because I was like, they've given it to foreigners in the past. I mean,
it's not the.
that's not.
I mean, they've been giving to foreigners. I mean, Adolf Hitler was man of the year,
Yeah.
and
I mean,
they've given it to.
we've seen. I think the Pope got it one year, and I didn't
Yeah, I mean,
Gorbachev probably get it.
Nehru had it. They gave it to Nehru. They gave it to Zadar Patel. They've
Yeah.
given it to, and I want to say even Menachem Begin got that award, Camp David year. Or
Yeah.
he
I
may
mean,
have had to share it with
so the people who are saying
Myanmar.
that, what they, their misunderstanding is that they just made the equivalent of person of the year means American of the year,
Yeah,
but that's not it. This is anybody in the entire
yeah,
world can qualify for this.
yeah. I think the person. I mean, if we just limit it to America, the person of the year this year would have to be Ron DeSantis. Ron
Yeah,
DeSantis would have to be. I
there's a
mean,
good one. I mean,
I
he
don't
was,
see anyone. I mean, Ron DeSantis. It's like, was Fauci the person of the year last year, or was it just healthcare workers?
I think the healthcare thing because of the pandemic, right?
Yeah, was that 2020 or 2021? I could have swore I saw Fauci get some award too. Who's, by the way, on his way out. Wish you well in retirement. But
Yes.
you'll still get to come to Capitol Hill for those hearings you like to come to.
Yeah. Apparently, I guess Fauci's worth $12.5 million,
How
and
does a civil servant get to that level?
because he makes $480,000 a year,
Yeah,
and his wife collects another 240.
yeah, that's pretty easy to do. Yeah. I
So
really think President Trump should have fired him, frankly, because as soon as he started running off and contradicting what the president was saying in 2019, 2020, he should have fired Dr. Fauci. He's the senior executive services. He can be fired on a whim. He's not He's not like protected by the unions. President Trump sure just ripped off the Band-Aid, fired him, and called it a day. And put in Ronnie Jackson in to head of NINDS. Actually, no, in fact, yeah. But we're in extra innings. We're at 5 after the hour. By the way, next week is our annual award show, so we'll be giving out our.
I'm looking at Wikipedia for the Person of the Year thing.
Yeah.
So 2020 it says Biden and Harris. 2021 they said it was Musk. In 2019 it was Greta Thunberg.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, that's the year that should have been the Hong Kong freedom fighters for protesters.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in general, when you look at it, especially the last.
So healthcare workers never got the award. Wow, you got screwed.
Yeah, you look around, you're like, what's the purpose of this Person of the Year? Anyway, I mean, the credibility.
And, look at this. Elon Musk was just a couple years ago. He was the darling of the left.
Yeah.
And I like to tell people, I go, I'm old enough to remember when Elon Musk was the darling of the left, and now he's scorned by the left. And I think putting out a poll to say, should I stay on as CEO of Twitter? I mean, I don't know if that was worthwhile for him, frankly.
But yeah, I think those results were going to come one way or the other like that. So, even if he steps down and they find another CEO, that CEO is going to answer to Musk and have to do Musk's bidding. So
exactly, yeah,
it's not going to make any difference.
Mm-hmm. And I tell you, those Twitter employees, I'm sorry, they should all be fired. The ones, they all you guys are. It's a private business. You're not these. I tell you, every one of these lefties view themselves as these freedom fighters who are fighting, for the little guy. No, you're not. You're collecting a really nice paycheck. Do what you're told, frankly. And so. Anyways, we're at final thoughts, Don. Final thoughts for 2022.
Yeah, last final thoughts for the year. All right. Well, one is just obviously is Happy New Year to everybody, and I hope you have a great 2023. 2022 was an interesting year. I mean, personally for me, I had positives, with another grandchild being born and some church things that I got a chance to do a little bit more with the things that I do in that.
One of the Osmond brothers is coming in to do a mission.
Yeah, one of the Osmond brothers is coming in to the Washington D.C. Visitor Center in April, and that'll be interesting in and of itself. On the other hand, I lost my longtime job and most of my income, and so it's teaching me to live a little bit different lifestyle now. Mm-hmm. But I think we kind of knew that those things were happening. But the life is full of ups and downs, but it's still good that you accentuate the positive and do that. But hopefully 2023 will be better. I mean, I think both you and I, Dwight, will hope that the investments turn around a little bit.
Yes.
So it was the worst year. It was the worst year for the S&P since 2008. So tech got hit pretty heavily. We had the crypto winter, which I was, I never wanted to touch crypto, and I'm glad I never did. And it's just, maybe Bitcoin is the one thing that will survive at all. I could never understand why people would invest in all these different cryptocurrencies when the value was just really something that was made up by the person who had mined it to begin with.
You might as well be investing in Disney bucks, but Disney bucks would do better for you than some of these crypto.
There's probably a lot of things that are better for you than crypto at this point. So
I don't seriously. Maybe Bob Iger should think of issuing Disney bucks as a digital currency. Actually, it might already be digital currency inside of Disneyland. Yeah,
I mean that's the thing too. I mean, I don't know that I'm actually hearing a whole lot by the Biden administration on digital currency. They I'll think.
He wants to do the digital dollar, doesn't he? He wants to do like a digital dollar.
I think the crash has cooled their enthusiasm for that right now. our good friend Delirio, who's from El Salvador, he a lot of times on Facebook he'll be, kind of just being effusive about the president in El Salvador. And the guy seems to be a pretty good guy, but he did make one major mistake, which is that
What is it? Is it
he
Bitcoin?
had he's he pushed crypto on the population, saying that he wanted crypto to become basically the equivalent of the dollar and everything like this. But since the time he pushed that, crypto has gone only in reverse,
Yeah.
and so that's been another disaster. But it's like a lot of other things. I think maybe there's a shakeout, and we'll get some reasonable things like Bitcoin, where you'll have something that actually
It's
might
like
have
all those
some
people who
value.
held on to that GameStop stock after much longer after Game 2 years ago.
Yeah, look, Elon Musk, for Tesla, they bought a lot of Bitcoin,
Yeah,
and that hasn't worked out well for them. Michael
yeah,
Saylor of MicroStrategy put a huge amount of money, of company money,
hmm
into Bitcoin, and
yeah.
they've lost their shirts on that. So that was not what they thought it was going to be.
And also, by the way, the bottom has fallen out of the used car market. Carvana is got 1 foot in the graveyard. Room's got 1 foot in the graveyard. I think Cars.com is the other one. They're all about to take a dive. CarMax has issued warnings about their earnings.
Yeah, but CarMax will be, they've had
They'll
these.
survive.
They've seen the ups and downs of the used car
Mhm.
market. They've been around, so they're
Yeah.
established. Carvana was built a little bit more on a
Well,
house of
Carvana was
cards.
also selling stolen cars. There was a story about a
They
guy in
had, yeah,
California.
look, they had a lot of problems with their titling issues, but a lot of the money they made was basically selling the cars. They had people buy them with a loan, and then they would repackage those loans and sell them off to investors.
Hmm.
But we've seen how
Housing
high
bubble.
interest rates got this year, and so all of a sudden that started choking off their business. So yeah, what was it? Their stock is down what, over 98%. It's
Yeah.
it's
And
almost
Maryland
worthless.
states, and so many states are suing Carvana right now. Maryland's one of them.
Yeah,
Uh,
it could be, it may not be much longer before we see those Carvana towers being completely empty and becoming.
they'll be like the World's Fair Tower in Tennessee.
Yeah,
It's still there.
I've been there. I've been down to Knoxville.
And as we saw on The Simpsons, it's now a place that you can buy wigs.
Yeah, it's just, I visited that World's Fair park when I was there several years ago at another conference. And I'm like, it's a shame. This tends to happen with every World's Fair in the
Well, I
U.S.
mean, Well, actually, the New York World's Fair in Queens, New York, they did back in, I want to say maybe 50s, 60s. They still preserve.
It was like 1963. My parents took me to that when I was like 4 years old or something like that, I
Well,
think.
they've actually still preserved. That area is still kind of nice.
I think they still have the world, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, it's in the opening of King of Queens, actually.
Yeah. So I think they still have that. But yeah, that
I mean,
it's
Japan still does the World Expos. I don't know if they're still doing those. I remember.
I
Uh,
went to one with my wife in 2004,
mhm.
2005. It was interesting. It was interesting, and the
Well,
Japanese loved it. The
Expo '74 had a tie-in with the Guymera movie.
and
That's the other.
I did go to when my father had a trip to Japan for the government.
Uh-huh.
Um, we went on my mother and I went. We tagged along because it was 1970 and it was Expo 70.
Yeah,
So
that yeah.
I have some vague recollections of 10. So in essence, I've attended about three of these in my
Hmm.
lifetime.
Hmm.
Um, so,
Do they
but
even do World's Fairs anymore? Because I remember Knoxville. Then
they,
they did one in New Orleans
I
after
think
that, and
I thought they tried to do something like that in Dubai or something like that within the last couple, like in 2020 or so. They wanted to do something like that, but it's been hard because the last several of these have lost so much money because
yeah.
you build these big parks and the display, the exhibits and the exhibit halls, but then what do you do with them afterwards?
Yeah. It's like when when cities host the Olympics. Los Angeles. They built the Coliseum. For the Olympics, and now they got no football team to play in there.
Well, I mean like Beijing had what was it? It was a 2008 or whenever it was they had the
Yeah.
Olympics there. The bird's
Hmm.
nest. I think that thing
Yeah.
is falling apart.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
They got a lot of other problems in China.
besides that, all right, I'm going to
Yeah.
shut up. We need to get this show done with. I'm going to let you finish off.
Sure. Final thoughts. One. Happy New Year's to everyone. Tune in next Friday. We got our big award show coming up. And we've also got a bunch of cool stuff planned for the new year for the show and other stuff coming up. As in looking back at 2022, I'll say it was a good year, a good year. It wasn't a bad year. There are a few ups and downs, but that's life. As the guy in Darby Guild and the Little People would say, you got to take the bitter with the sweet. You can't have all happiness all the time. You can't have all sadness at the same all the time. So, great quote from. By the way, if you haven't seen Darby Guild and the Little People, everybody should go see it. It is great. It's great special effects for the time of the movie. They got this CG. Well, I don't even. It's an animated banshee. Really good. Check it out. It's on Disney Plus. And in the old days, you could actually catch them on the weekends when you actually had TV stations that did reruns of movies and stuff like that. But I'm looking forward to 2023. A lot of good things. 2023 is when we lay down the foundation for 2024, and we've got over 100 municipal races in the state of Maryland that's coming up, and we should at least try and pick off something. We should be winning some of these municipal races that are coming up. But that's all I've got. Thank you everyone for watching. Happy New Year. We'll see you guys on next year. Good night.
Good night.